Hello, everybody. It's me, Carmine DeStefano, your bookman. I'm back. It's Thursday. Friday. It's Friday. God, it's a wonderful day. I really got to do something with the lighting. I need lighting behind the camera, but my camera's practically up against the wall. So here we are. And I thought for this week, because I want to do this every Friday, as I've mentioned before, I thought I was going to complain about Overwatch 2, go back to the whole video game thing. But instead, what I'm going to do is three really big titles were released this week that always come with a bit of controversy, if you will. And really, when you look at all of them, I did a video a long time ago, and I kind of want to update what I did because years ago, probably about a decade ago, I was talking about how Metal Gear Solid was overrated. It got a little bit of backlash, and some people agreed because we're not talking about a series that is sort of so bad it's good, any of that crap that the internet conjured up, came up with on its own, or that some people like, some people don't, like Bulletstorm or something. We're talking about a series that is considered one of the great gaming series ever. And what gets lost in a lot of that is the fact that there were two titles that were released before Metal Gear Solid, and everyone's obsession with voiceover acting, cutscenes that went on and on and on, weird storytelling, really buffoonery. It's not even storytelling. And originally, the Metal Gear Solid games were kind of polygonal. And then we went to the PlayStation 2 phase where everybody looked a little bit more realistic, though the graphics were muddier than they are now. And that just blew people away. Look, I can admit I was wrong. When I first played The Last of Us, I was blown away by how the voiceover actors and actresses had very realistic versions of themselves motion captured in the game. And I myself, when I first played through it, was, I have to say, wooed by the illusion of something deeper than pretty much things I've seen a million times before. Oh, it's about love. No, it's about humanity is ugly. That's really what it's about. And I heard my ending, my roundup, my conclusion, everything that I was saying that I wrote originally. Didn't wing it like I do now, didn't improv. I wrote it down. And even in the game, I remember when I was reviewing the game and I was going through different scene hits and stuff like that of the storyline unfolding itself, I did point out that it was gruesome in so many different ways. And the things that you do are just atrocious. But I acted as if it was such a magnificent game. And then I played through it again, like all Sony exclusives, Western-based exclusives. You play through it again and you go, man, this game sucks. And that's pretty much what happened. I played it again to do a walkthrough. By the middle of it, I felt bad because of the performers and the characters they performed as, because I didn't want to do it anymore. It was boring and I was tired of it and I wanted to get it done with and trade it back in. So those types of games now are still being sort of heralded by public appeal, more or less, especially here on the internet, as being these great games. But I have to explain this to you. There is a reason why Nintendo won the console wars back in the old days, and there's a reason why they won it again now. And most likely, unless somebody else comes up out of the woodwork where Sony keeps getting money and doesn't give up on their attempts to sell consoles, Nintendo is going to win and be the only real source of video game console outside PC or Steam Deck. There's a reason for that. And after the Wii U, after the GameCube, then the Wii U with the Wii in between, people were saying, hey, Nintendo should just be making games and not consoles. Well, they made the switch. It was revolutionary. It sold over 150 million. It's still selling them. And now the Switch 2 is even better. And it's going to sell a lot. And the reason is because the majority of the people on this planet that are into video games want to have a good time. That's what gaming is. You don't go over someone's house and they say, hey, come over. We're going to have a bunch of couples. We're going to be doing that hip new adult thing where we get together and we're going to play games. And you say, cool. What games? And they say, well, we're going to read from Tennessee Williams for 3.5 hours. You'd go, that's not a game. See, there's an argument that young people on the internet have, especially with me as somebody who studies the English language and writing and everything, that fun is subjective, that repetitive is subjective. No, they're not. They are defined by fundamentals, by foundational aspects that make a universal acceptance and understanding as to what fun is. It's like beauty. Whether or not you think a specific person is the most attractive to you, there is a fundamental, foundational aspect of the term beauty that is earned through natural physical appeal that everybody can more or less agree on. Are there marginally based individuals who have specific elements to them that could be attractive one way or another that some people just don't see? Yes. But for the most part, like art, like paintings and pictures, whatever, there is something that is universally accepted as beautiful. There are things that are universally accepted as fun, enjoyable. And that's one of the reasons why you would have someone say something like, it was as much fun as watching paint dry or grass grow, because universally, people would understand that that's boring, right? Are there people that want to sit around and watch grass grow? There are people that their job is as herbalists or even geological types that would look at grass growing and find it interesting. But is there a universal group of people that would sit there and watch grass grow and go, yeah, oh man, this is great, or watch paint? No, of course not. So when it comes to Metal Gear Solid as a whole, or even just Metal Gear, the original game that came out on the MSX and the Famicom and the regular Nintendo, it was a game I played when I was a kid, and it kind of drove me nuts. But at the same time, you could see, because the 80s into the early 90s was when video gaming was really at its best. There were innovations being made. There were statements being made. There were certain things that were being done, and a lot of different companies trying their best to sort of get themselves identified beyond everybody else or outside the regular norms of just jumping over stuff and hitting things or whatever, or just being another Super Mario game. They came up with different ideas. And one of the ideas when it was Metal Gear was that you were doing espionage and infiltration. Now, the story was fucking stupid, but at that same time, so were the Ninja Gaiden games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And those were universally accepted as just great games, to the point where they evolved as gaming did. You're talking about demon statues raising up a demon, whatever the hell, and then you're talking about another guy that wants to bring about all the demons to bring about the end of the world. And then you're talking about a spaceship and aliens. So that was Ninja Gaiden as a whole in the Nintendo Entertainment Series. But you played the game because it was hectic, upscale, ridiculously fast, very challenging, but not too challenging, especially when you found ways, like I did as a kid, to exploit all the different basic and simplistic programming of when enemies would come in and when they would go out. So, like, for instance, I remember there was a jump pattern I had to go through in the fifth area, or fifth act, I should say. I was going to say area. You could say that, but it was act. They're broken up into acts. And it was 5-2. And I remember when I got to a certain point on a platform that looked like a metal gurney, whatever those things are called, I realized that if I moved a little bit to the right, the enemy on the left would disappear. Sometimes when one of those harpies or eagles, whatever, would come in and they would do tons of damage, you could just kind of move a little bit further down the screen and they would fly past you and disappear. Like, these were things that you could exploit because simplistic programming. With Metal Gear, the original one, there were so many different instances. And I know the Angry Video Game Nerd complained about it when he did a review, but he also complained about Metroid, and Metroid is one of the great games that was ever made. But it was a game that when I was a kid was very frustrating and it never finished. So I had to watch somebody else do it later on in life when I started watching the series from the beginning. And really what it comes down to is here's this bipedal destructive weapon of nuclear proportions that can wipe out the world, except it can be stopped by a guy with clay mines and a rocket launcher. Whoopsie. I guess we didn't realize that it was that weak in terms of its armor or whatever. So more or less the original game, it was different. It was challenging, but you couldn't really figure out where you were going. But that was games back then. If you had a map, it would have been a lot easier and whatever. There were spots where gas would just come up and you didn't know you needed a gas pass. There were spots, you could easily get lost and not know what you were getting. But whatever the case, the story was dumb. You found out that Big Boss was the one that sent you and the one that was behind the whole thing and sent you out there to falsify documents. And I'm not sure if I remember correctly, if it was that one where you found out that the big boss that you were looking for was in another outer heaven, or if it didn't happen till the second one. But whatever the case, as I said, storyline didn't mean anything as long as the gameplay was fun. And the gameplay was every time you got thrown into an area with nothing but your bare hands and cigarettes. And every time somebody found you, you saw the exclamation point over their heads. You heard the music that would make you shit your pants. And throughout the course of an entire area, screen to screen, these fuckers wouldn't leave you alone for 2 seconds. They were going to chase you everywhere, and they're shooting bullets all over the place. The worst is when you got the machine gun, because they were little white dots bullets, and it would fly here, and the guy would be right in front of you, and you couldn't kill him. So eventually you would get weapons, and eventually you'd get some kind of ammo, and you would get rations, and you would level up to an extent. There was a progressive system where your health meter would increase and everything like that. But as the games became, sirens! Thank you very much. That's exactly. And I closed my windows, by the way. So the problem is I live in an area filled with a lot of old farts, and when they fall or their air conditioner doesn't work, whatever they call the 911 and the fire department comes over. And I have a fire department house and precinct right across the street from me. So I hear it all the time. And there's another one down there, and there's whatever. You don't need to know about that. But then there was another Metal Gear, and not the westernized one where you could pick any people, because the Western fans like me played that game and wanted to spit all over it, the original one. Japanese, I think they welcomed it a little bit more so, but I think that was more about nationalism because it was one of their own. It's Konami that made it, Hideo Kojima. So they made a second one that was Western biased, and you could pick different characters. It had nothing to do with Metal Gear 2 in Japan. Japan's Metal Gear 2 took place afterwards, where you found out that Big Boss was the main character, Solid Snake's cloned father. And he was the one that sent you out, and he had another Metal Gear because apparently everybody has these things that nobody knew about. And you met up with some woman, love interest, yada, yada, blah. More cutscenes because the graphics got better. So you got to see more stupid ass dialogue. You got to see more of this like B film story unfold. It was the same combat system. I guess you can crawl. So that made it a little bit different because it's more like a Super Nintendo game if it would be transferred over than a regular Nintendo game. And ultimately, no one really here knew about it. But then it came to the Sony PlayStation, which people bought because of Resident Evil and Tomb Raider. Games like Metal Gear Solid sort of came in afterwards. And it was, voiceover acting and everything like that. So the first Metal Gear Solid game got a lot of press for being this advanced, cutting-edge type game when the majority of the gameplay is just you crawling around and trying to avoid contact. Then you fight a commanding officer, all hell breaks loose, and after you kill them with all your weaponry and everything that you've acquired, you just go back to what you were doing before. So you had those two games, and they played in the same way, and they told another over-the-top moronic story about another Metal Gear and espionage and double crosses and all this other shit, and introduced new characters like Revolver Ocelot and Liquid Snake. Why Liquid? Does he fuse into stuff? Does he morph into? No, he's just got blonde hair and has an English accent. I don't know. He's his clone. He's Solid Snake. I'm sorry, his clone twin. And Solid Snake is voiced over by David Hayter, and the other guy, I don't know, could have been It could have been fucking Patrick Stewart Frog. I have no idea who it was. So we got to that point, and you move on to the second one. But Metal Gear Solid Delta, after you've done all this, now takes you back, because episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars were so terrible that nobody tried to emulate them with prequels all over the place. It takes you back to this fucking computer. It takes you back to what just happened? What happened? Hold on. That's fine. Okay. What just happened? Where's my camera? Camera? I don't have access to this feature. Okay. Just see something. One sec. What happened to my camera? Why did my camera go out, damn it? I don't want an AI bot. I want you to give me my camera. Okay, hold on a second. One sec. Mm-hmm. Back in a minute. Hold on, wait 1 second. Let me just take this, just in case. I'm gonna type this up again. All right.